You're hanging out after hours with Matt Anderson, presented by Inside the Gamecocks.
Welcome into the Late Night Gamecock Show. I am your host, Matt Anderson, joined as always by Alex Jones. Alex, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. It's good to be back on here.
Yeah, it's really good to be back on here, and a 2-week break. Actually a little bit happened during the 2-week break. Weren't really expecting a ton, but obviously the Gamecocks did get some commitments on the football field, so we'll have some new commitments to talk about a little bit later on in the show. But I want to apologize. We are on a little bit later than normal. Normally the show comes on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. right here on this YouTube channel. Or if you're, finding us on podcast, you have no idea about the delay. But 2 weeks off, and man, you just start trying to figure out your audio, trying to figure out your video, that type of stuff. So I do apologize, and that's all on my end. Alex and Phil were ready to go. But anyway, if there's going to be audio issues tonight, like I said, it's my fault. But Alex, what's going on your way?
Yeah, just ready to get back into it after a couple of weeks off. As you mentioned, it's still been a lot of news that's happening in the football world, baseball world this past couple of days, but, a lot to get to tonight.
Yeah, while I might have taken some time off and, Phil, JC, and JB took some time off from the main show, Alex, you did not take any time off. You were firing off articles. I hope you took a little bit of time around the 4th at least.
Yeah, I had a little bit of time around the 4th. Obviously, recruiting is kind of dead around that time. Not a whole lot's going on, but we found some time to take some time away.
Well, I hope you still have all of your fingers after the 4th of July. Sometimes in South Carolina, that kind of thing can happen.
Can't confirm that I do.
Good. All your digits. You need them to type anyway.
So
real quick, we'll talk a lot on this show tonight. We're going to talk about Major League Baseball draft. We're going to recap that. That happened over the last couple of days. South Carolina has a new director of player personnel on the football field. So we'll talk about who that is and, what that person's bio looks like and what he can potentially bring to the Gamecocks football recruiting efforts. SEC Media Days are ongoing right now, but thankfully Shane got everything out of the way on Monday. So if you haven't had a chance, you can go back and watch Shane and Luke Doty and Alex Huntley and Debo Williams talk. And, it's typical SEC Media Day stuff, but we'll definitely touch on that. And then lastly, we're going to have a 2025 football class reset. Where do the Gamecocks stand currently? And what's left for the Gamecocks? So before we move straight into the main meat of our show, real quick, in men's basketball, Lamont Paris has hired Will Bailey as an assistant coach to round out his coaching staff. That name might sound familiar to a lot of Gamecock basketball fans because Will Bailey was actually on the staff with Frank Martin for a couple of years when Frank Martin was leading the Fighting Gamecocks. But most recently, Will Bailey has been at Loyola Chicago, and he's been assistant coach there. Obviously, he has ties to the South Carolina program and kind of knows the lay of the land in South Carolina. And I think a lot of things have changed in recruiting in South Carolina specifically, and North Carolina and Georgia. But a lot of connections to the basketball community. He's a relationship builder. He's good on the court as well. So I know that Lamont's happy to have Will Bailey on the staff. And then also, Alex, I think you might have broke this on the Big Spur. But South Carolina has learned that in the Fort Myers tip-off, they will have their first matchup against Xavier. So Gamecocks will tip off in Fort Myers against Xavier, and they will face either the winner or the loser of the Michigan-Virginia Tech game. I think those games are November 25th, if memory serves. And Michigan and Virginia Tech will be the first game, followed by South Carolina and Xavier. I know a lot of Gamecock fans are excited for the Gamecocks get an opportunity to knock off Sean Miller, who kind of led them down a coaching wormhole a couple of years ago. But I think all Gamecock fans are happy now that Lamont Paris is the head man right now for the men's basketball team. But the good news is those are two likely Q1 games because they are neutral court games. And Michigan, Virginia Tech, you're talking about teams in the Big Ten and the ACC that are going to, pad the strength of schedule and pad those, net numbers. And then Xavier as well should be no slouch. So Alex, really quick, any quick thoughts on Will Bailey or just finding out who the Gamecocks will play in Fort Myers?
Yeah, I think on Will Bailey, I think that was a pretty solid hire by Lamont. You know, a guy who's really familiar with the program, obviously having already been on staff here. You know, and just a guy who, like as you mentioned, a guy who's a relationship builder, pretty good recruiter. And, you know, I think it was pretty good for him, as Lamont mentioned, kind of before he was hired. You know, they got this future class kind of under wraps right now with the 3 commits, so kind of allowed him to kind of come back here, get his feet wet, you know, back in Columbia. And I think that was going to end up being a pretty solid hire for South Carolina. And then on the Fort Myers tip off, like, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty solid tournament to be in. You got some big name teams and as you mentioned, you know, those are probably both games you play are probably going to be quad 1 games, which is what you need. You know, I'm sure when basketball comes back around, we'll get into all the net ranking stuff, but you know, that's going to be a solid tournament for them to play in and go have a lot of eyes on it.
Yeah, and obviously Gamecocks went out to Phoenix last year, I think, and brought a trophy home, and the Gamecocks will be trying to do that in Fort Myers. And, you know, it's a tough time of year for Gamecock fans to get down there because, you know, it is usually around Thanksgiving weekend, you know, when these kind of Thanksgiving tournaments happen. And obviously November 25th, we all know that's going to be close to Thanksgiving, if not the day of Thanksgiving. I have to look at the calendar. But anyway, Fort Myers is a really fun city. You know, if you want to go to Florida and spend Thanksgiving there, I know that Lamont and the boys would love to have you in attendance, and hopefully they'll bring a trophy home. So the next thing to talk about, and this is really just wrapping up, Alex. I know that you probably followed John Whittle's coverage of this on the Big Spur. I've been refreshing nonstop to see what's happening in the Major League Baseball draft. But what I'm going to do quickly is just give a rundown for anybody that might have missed it. Any Gamecock players that had either affiliation with the team last year or recruits that were committed to South Carolina. The first kid to go off the board is a high school recruit, PJ Morlando, round 1, 16th overall pick to the Marlins. That's a slot value of $4.7 million. So I know there were a lot of Gamecock fans that were holding out hope that PJ might make it to campus. And while I do think there was an opportunity for that, depending on where he went in the draft and what that slot value was, I don't expect PJ Morlando to be in a Gamecock uniform. And that goes for every player that I'm going to run through and mention right now. So I'm not going to say that after each and every player, but I did want to give a special shout out to PJ Morlando. Hope he has nothing but success at the professional ranks and Major League Baseball and the minor leagues as he starts his career. Catcher Cole Messina, round 3, 101st overall to the Rockies, slot value of $1 million. Pitcher Brandon Clark, round 5, 148th overall, slot value of $457,000 to the Red Sox. Pitcher Eli Jones, round 7, 218th overall, slot value of $251,000 to the Twins. Pitcher Garrett Gainey, round 9, 276th overall, slot value of $190,000 to the Rays. High school recruit and younger brother of Cole Messina, pitcher Carson Messina, round 12, 367th overall. The maximum that you can get as past round 10 is $150,000 unless there is bonus money that is left over from players that may be signed for less than slot value. So look for Carson to get at least $150,000, maybe more. And then those are the only guys that got drafted that really had a Gamecock connection, unless I'm missing one, Alex. Is there anyone I missed that you can think of offhand?
I think you got it. I think that was right on.
Yeah, and then, the big stuff, the big thing that happened today is outfielder Kennedy Jones was not selected. Pitcher Chris Veach was not selected. And then high school recruit Bo Hollins was not drafted. And all of those players were expected to be drafted and signed. So what does that mean right now? It means the Gamecocks have a heck of a lot of players on their baseball roster. I don't know how they're going to work through this. I know that at different times, John Whittle has reported that Kennedy Jones and Chris Veach would each be open to free agent deals. But it's really a bummer they didn't get drafted because they really have no leverage in the situation. It's just, do I want to play another year in college? Or do I want to go to the professional world, or do I want to try and, start at the very, very bottom of, the minor leagues and rookie ball and all that. So we'll see what happens. Bo Hollins has indicated that he will be enrolling to South Carolina. Pretty big get for South Carolina, the 338th overall high school recruit, according to Perfect Game. Stands at 6'4", 220 pounds, plays first base, and is also a left-handed pitcher. We'll have to talk to Whittle a little bit more about Bo Hollins and see, where he projects to play at South Carolina. And again, I say this on every single show. If you're not a member of theBigSpur.com, make sure you go ahead and join. Not only do you get all of Alex's excellent writing and reporting, but if you're curious about what's going to happen with the men or the baseball team, I always say men's baseball team. I'm so used to saying men's basketball. But if you're interested in what's going to happen with the baseball team over the next couple of weeks and how the rosters are going to shake out, and if there's going to be any more moves in the portal, definitely join theBigSpur.com and follow John Whittle's reporting there. I do see a question here, Alex, and I'll let you answer this, and then I'll follow up with any other thoughts I have. Craig asks, is it possible Carson Messina comes to school? I would think we would pay him much better. What are your thoughts on that, Alex?
Yeah, I think I maybe saw where I don't think he's going to end up at school. I think he's going to get what he wants in the draft, but I'd imagine he's going to not be at South Carolina. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's been leaning that way for a while. And look, when we say this, we're reporting basically what John Whittle has said. So I don't have any specific insight into that, Craig. I do know that Carson was the kid that would definitely entertain coming to school if he wasn't selected. But I think that that amount of money and where he wants to be, his best path might be the professional ranks, because being a highly ranked pitcher, he still has a lot to work on. And some of the kids that have the tools that he has, and they really do feel like it makes best sense for them, and it's in their best interest to go to professional ranks, take a signing bonus, and just see where things shake out in a couple of years. But a kid that has amazing stuff, and he's got to refine his game a little bit. But excited for him, like I said. And now, you still got a lot of Gamecock players that did not get drafted, probably some guys that passed on getting drafted to come back to school. And I think especially on the pitching staff, when you look at like a Eli Jersenbeck, a Matt Becker, and I'm probably leaving a guy out, but what's his name? He was on the show. He was on the main show once.
Roman Kimball.
Yeah, Roman Kimball. Yeah. To get those three guys back, I think that either of those three guys could be a Friday night guy next year for the Gamecocks, and you're looking at a pretty solid starting rotation on the weekends there. So, like I said, stay tuned to theBigSpur.com if you have any more questions, and definitely join. And Whittle will answer everything. He's really good about that. I guess the next thing to talk about really quick before we take a break, Alex, there is a new director of player personnel at South Carolina. Darren Usher is replacing Taylor Edwards in this role. For those of you that don't know anything about Darren Usher, and I'll be honest, I didn't know a lot about him until his name started popping up on the Big Spur and people started talking about him. Darren is a 2009 graduate of University of South Carolina, and he calls this particular job in particular, his dream job. So 2009 graduate of South Carolina. In 2013, he was a graduate assistant at Georgetown. He was filming practice, cutting film, breaking down film, recruiting, and in charge of all the travel. And that's a tough job. That's a 80-hour-a-week job.
Yeah.
But in 2014, he was the football operations coordinator at Boise State under Brian Harrison. After that, he took over the director of player personnel at Boise State and assisted in evaluating and identifying talent and how to uncover diamonds in the rough. And 2021 followed Brian Harrison to Auburn in the same role. And ultimately, that staff was let go after the 2022 season. In 2023, he found his way to Oregon and was on the recruiting staff at Oregon, mainly focusing on the transfer portal. And then January 2024, Usher was hired by Chip Kelly as UCLA's executive director of recruiting. 13 days later, old Chip decided to take the Ohio State offensive coordinator job, and the same day, Dan Lanning at Oregon called Usher, and he went back to Oregon. And then 2 weeks ago, he became the director of player personnel for the University of South Carolina. So, Alex, I'm going to let you talk about this here in a moment, but this is a big role in the football staff. It handles a good share of the recruiting relations. not just with recruits, but with families and with their high school coaches. If you're a quarterback, your quarterback trainer, the people that work on speed and agility with these guys. I mean, really, really it completely just envelopes everybody around a recruit to help the Gamecock coaching staff. He kind of helps the coaches form their recruiting boards, the relationships, the plan for each recruit. This is a role that works in the background, but it's very important from a relationship building perspective. And Alex, when you and I were working those camps a couple of weeks ago, I mean, there is a staff of people that will be reporting to Darren, helping him in this process too. And when you're on campus and you're a recruit, you're constantly with support staff, and Darren's going to be the one that's running the show here. So, Alex, just before we hit a break, I want to get your thoughts on Darren Usher, what you've heard so far. I'll let you take the floor.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with him, with how important this position is for South Carolina. I think Shane Beamer and South Carolina made a really solid hire here, it appears. A guy who, obviously has the experience in this job already. Talking about his time at Boise State, he had that job there for, I think it was about 5 seasons or so as a director of recruiting. And then, Harsin wanted to bring him to Auburn. So I think that says a lot too, that he thought that much of him to bring him into the SEC, has that SEC experience now, and then even, as you mentioned, had the short UCLA experience. But again, I think it says something that, Chip Kelly thought enough of him to hire him in that spot. And then kind of bouncing on that, for a guy like Dan Lanning, who's an amazing recruiter in Oregon, who's a school who, always recruits well, for them to feel like they can bring him back and want him back at any time, and did so for 2 stints. I think it says a lot about him. And then just kind of icing on the cake with him is that he's a South Carolina graduate. So, the job's going to be really, really important to him. He's going to do everything he can to make South Carolina as successful as he can. Yeah,
and I think about it just off the cuff here, and you think about, okay, Boise State, Auburn, Oregon, UCLA, Oregon, South Carolina. So you got 5 Power 5, 3, however you want to say it, but major schools. Everyone knows who Boise State is. But to climb the ranks this quickly from 2013 to 2024, leading the charge of basically, recruiting efforts on the support side at an SEC school, like you said, I think just says a lot about him. So, he's already sent out a ton of 2026 offers. I mean, he's definitely leveraging relationships he's built. And I don't know what he can do on the 2025 side of things right now. I think, for better or for worse, a lot of that ground's already been laid. Maybe just getting up to speed on the coaches, learning things about the coaches, learning what makes them tick, how they want their position group to work. But I'm pretty excited about the hire overall. But before we go to break, Alex, have you played NCAA football or college football 25 yet?
I was so excited to do that. And then, I was looking it up and realized that you have to have, it won't come out on Xbox One, which is what I have. And this was like a week before the game came out. So I was not happy when I found out that news. But it seems like it's been pretty awesome looking at all the clips on social media and stuff. It seems like it's awesome. And hopefully maybe down the road I'll get it. But sad that I cannot play it right now.
Well, Alex, I don't want to rub salt on an open wound, but I got the game on Monday, and I haven't been able to play it that much. I mean, well, I guess today's only Tuesday. But all the stuff that people are saying about Nick Harbor being a cheat code is absolutely true. Right before we hopped on this show, I was actually finishing up the game against Akron. I'm 4 games in, and I play on All-American mode, so I'm not on Heisman or anything, but I'm on All-American mode. I'm not bragging because it's really easy to do this if you have Nick Harbor. But through 4 games, 68 receptions, 3,974 yards, and 52 touchdowns.
Jeez.
All you got to do is run a go route and throw it off. It's pretty hilarious.
What's
it's actually getting right not fun. 4-0. Scored over 100 points in every game.
4-0.
Yeah, I got to change it up. I'm not going to go to Heisman. I just got to stop throwing, just fades to Nick Harbor 80 yards downfield because nobody can catch him. It's really funny. God. But I hope you get to play it soon. And anytime you're in Florence, just swing by the house. I'll probably have it fired up, and you can play it anytime. But With all that being said, let's have a quick word from our partners, and we'll be right back to finish out this show.
I said, oh, Lord Jesus, it's a fire. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Emergencies and accidents happen. When you're in the middle of a fire or water event, all you want is for things to return to normal as soon as possible. Resto Pros of the Midlands is with you. RestoProsMidlandsSC.com. Open 24/7 when you need them. Quality that is guaranteed.
Down here in the South, we don't always see eye to eye. While our taste in college football teams, or what sauce, if any, goes best on a rack of ribs, or what to mix with our Dixie vodka might be up for debate, we can all agree there's nothing better than a Southern tailgate. And like our favorite college teams, our ingredients come from small towns and big cities. They're grown in Southern soil, are crafted by Southern hands, and proudly represent the South in our backyard and beyond. So raise a glass of Dixie Southern Vodka to celebrate being made in America and raised in the South.
Oh, man, the building is on fire.
During and after natural disasters or accidents, there can be a heavy loss to property. Resto Pros of the Midlands is here to help. Open 24/7. Call them when you need them. 803-493-0170. RestoProsMidlandsSC.com. Quality that is guaranteed.
Welcome back in to the Late Night Gamecock Show. So, Alex, SEC Media Days are going on. Are you happy that you are not at SEC Media Days right now?
Yeah, I've been to a couple of those, and I wasn't unhappy to be able to watch it from home and not have to travel to Dallas. But, I thought we had some interesting things come up in that yesterday. But, yeah, I can say I enjoyed watching it through TV yesterday.
Yeah, I've heard it's kind of a zoo there, especially with the media. I've never been to SEC Media Days, maybe one day, but I can't say it's at the top of my bucket list or anything like that. But so Shane Beamer talked, Luke Doty talked, Debo Williams talked, and Boogie Huntley talked. What were your takeaways from that? And you could go with pick any single one of them. It doesn't matter to me.
I say I think one of the bigger takeaways I had was just the confidence level that they had, that really all of them had in the defense this year. I think when you listen to them speak, it seems like they are really, really excited about the potential of this defense. You think about all three levels of that defense. You got returning starters who, have played a lot of football at South Carolina in the SEC. Then you add guys like a DeAndre Jules or a Monkel Goodwine into that interior, along with those, a guy like Tonka and TJ and those guys. So, I think, there's a lot of confidence on that side of the ball. And I think probably if I think back to the SEC Media Days, that's probably one of the bigger takeaways I had.
Yeah, I'll start with Shane, and I agree with everything you just said, but I'll start with Shane. I thought that, Shane is always a little feisty. He's always going to back his guys up. And I think that, what was available on ESPN, his 31 minutes where he had an opening statement and then he had some questions that were asked to him. I think that, what Shane said is very plausible in the fact that he looks at last year and 5-7, not good enough. And, ultimately that falls on his shoulders. But how many games can you think back to where, what Shane said, a couple plays go a different way? The big one in my head, and I think everyone's head, is the Florida game. Yeah. That one was just awful. I don't think that they were ever truly out of the North Carolina game to start the season, despite the poor offensive line play. Georgia just kind of overwhelmed them in the second half, but they were playing with Georgia there in the first half. So I think that Shane said the right things, but I think that, a lot of Gamecock fans are ready for him to back up the talk. And that was one of my takeaways. Like you mentioned, it seems like even what Boogie Huntley said, I think it was Boogie, he said, look, we got to take what we do on the practice field into every game. We have to play like we play on the practice field. And to have the amount of depth and returning talent that's on that defense, I'm not that worried about the defensive line. I'm not that worried about linebacker play. I guess if I had a worry, it might be the secondary, but I think there's a lot of talent in the secondary. And if you have the ability to generate a pass rush, it doesn't mean that the Gamecocks are having to sit back in coverage like they were against Florida and just getting picked apart. Or even, the end of the Mississippi State game, although the Gamecocks won that game, that one got a little hairy at the end. So I thought that was good. I thought one of the funnier questions that was asked was one of the Ole Miss guys asked Devo Williams what his thoughts were on Juice Wells and what he could potentially provide to Ole Miss. And you could see in Devo's facial expression that he was not really F that guy, but kind of F that guy.
Yeah, it was a little bit of he didn't want to answer that question.
I think it's a tough question. I think it was a poor question from that media member. But you have to remember that at SEC Media Days, you have now 14 schools represented, and those guys are there to ask questions about their school. And they're going to take every media opportunity they can get to get a microphone in their face to ask a question about their school. So I understood the question, but I did think the demeanor was kind of funny. I mean, for those of you that haven't seen it, it's like a 7-minute interview. You can find it on YouTube. It's about maybe halfway through, maybe second or third question.
Yeah.
And it just summarized it. Devo said, I don't know what they're going to get out of him. And he was like, I don't know anything about Ole Miss. I mean, I'm sure all respect to Ole Miss, and, Juice is a really good player, but I don't know. And it was kind of like how behind the scenes last year with Juice Wells, a lot of things were, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to play or if he's not going to play. So I thought that was interesting. I thought that Luke Doty had some very mature answers, talking about what it's like to play quarterback in the SEC, how that quarterback room is maturing. I thought it was really interesting what Debo also said, talking about the quarterback competition. Someone asked about Robbie Ashford and Lenore Sellers and Luke Doty. And he said, we just want the best quarterback to play. We want competition. We want the person who wins the competition and is the best quarterback for us to win to play. And I've always said this, iron sharpens iron, and competition breeds excellence. And, I think that Lenore Sellers is very, 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 very likely to be the starting quarterback against Old Dominion and for the entirety of the season. But just knowing that competition level is happening, and especially along the defense, Tonka, TJ, Boogie, they cannot be complacent right now. They have to bring it every single day of practice to keep their spot. So I guess my overall takeaway is I like the Gamecocks mindset, and I like their answers. I thought they were very mature answers. I thought that they got some silly questions in there. I don't know about all these fit questions. Tell me about your fit. That seemed to be a very polarizing topic for all the media to figure out the fits. In case you were wondering, Deebo Samuels was wearing alligator shoes. Got some compliments on it. Luke Doty wore, I guess, a cowboy hat or something like that. So
I think they all got cowboy hats to bring home afterwards.
Yeah, Luke said that one of the little booths they had to go to was design a hat, and that's what he designed. He said, I'm in Texas, might as well. But there are a lot of questions about Oklahoma, specifically to Shane, and what's it going to be like to go back to Oklahoma? Have you talked to your team about going to Oklahoma? Have you talked about Brett Venables at Oklahoma? I mean, kind of just some weird questions, but it's still fun to hear from the guys, hear from your head coach. And it's fun to hear, other coaches around the country having to answer questions. So go check out the SEC Media Days. I don't know where it is next year, Alex, so maybe you'll be there and you can find an off-the-wall question to ask every single player. It's in Atlanta, so you'll probably be there then next year. So count down the days, my friend.
I went to Atlanta the first year I worked. Yeah.
So, the Gamecocks right now.
I went to Atlanta the first year I worked.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
I think.
How many days away are we? 46 days away from kickoff, give or take, something like that. I think it's 46 days. Anyway.
I don't know the exact day, but I think we're somewhere around that.
Yeah, so it's August 31st for the first game. I pulled it up earlier. I think it's 46 days, 45 days or 46 days. Anyway, SEC Media Days always represents the kickoff for football season. It's when you start really digging in. I don't know about you, Alex, but I got my Phil Steele magazine here, got it opened up to South Carolina, going to be doing my research on all these teams. Alex has actually done a lot of research on this schedule, and he's posting articles on the Big Spur. So if you want to look at the schedule coming up, please make sure you're checking out Alex's work. But right now we're still in that lull. I mean, practice hasn't started yet, so we're still in recruiting time frame right now. So I thought after a 2-week hiatus, it would be beneficial for us to reset this recruiting board. For those of you that maybe took 2 weeks off with me, Alex didn't, but some of you might have. A lot's happened here recently. Currently, the Gamecocks have 18 commitments. Currently, the 27th best recruiting class in the country, according to 24/7 Sports. Of those 18 commitments, 8 of the commitments are ranked 4 stars or higher on at least one major recruiting ranking site. So that's roughly 44% of the class. You take out the kicker, that's 50% of the class. So, whether it's 24/7, we believe in 24/7 Sports rankings, but there are competitors, and that's why there's a composite. So I always like to look and see how many players are rated 4 stars or higher elsewhere. This is a good class. I think that, a lot of people are bogged down in 3 stars, but there's a reason the Gamecocks are taking these players this early. So I wanted to break down the class really quick, talk about where we're at the moment, and then Alex, we'll talk about where the Gamecocks might fill in the rest of the recruiting class a little bit later. But so at quarterback, they have 1 player committed. It's 3-star Cutter Woods, the 41st overall ranked quarterback in the country. Running back, there are no commitments right now. That's kind of a weird one. We got to see what the Gamecocks do there. Obviously Markwell Blackwell is coming in as a first-year coach at South Carolina, and being at Texas A&M, he's having to really try and figure out the recruiting landscape, guys he can go after. Wide receiver, the Gamecocks have 3 players committed right now. 4-star Lex Cyrus, a very recent commit. He committed last week. He's the 34th ranked wide receiver in the country. 4-star Brian Rowe, 39th ranked wide receiver in the country. And 3-star Jaden Sellers, who's the 51st ranked wide receiver in the country. So we'll go through the offense, and then I want to take a quick second to kind of talk through the offense with Alex. At tight end, they have 1 tight end committed, 3-star Preston Douglas, the 92nd ranked tight end in the country. And the offensive line, they have 1 commitment in 4-star Cedric Surratt Jr., 27th ranked offensive tackle in the country. So I kind of wanted to take a moment here and talk about, okay, so the Gamecocks have the 41st ranked quarterback in the country. Well, how many Power 5 teams are there, Power 3 teams? You take the ACC, the SEC, the Big, and maybe the Big 12. Well, there's a lot more than 41 teams there. So, being the 41st ranked quarterback in the country and a 3-star should not be a knock on the Gamecock coaching staff or a knock on the kid. And I think when you break it down that way and you think about it, it becomes a little bit different in your mind's eye. So, moving on to the defensive line, 4-star Caleb Williams, 32nd ranked defensive lineman in the country. Kobe Sakia Pra, 50th ranked edge in the country. Jaquavius Dodd, 53rd ranked edge in the country. And 3-star Anthony Addison, the 62nd ranked edge in the country. Then you have 4 defensive linemen and 4 linebackers. And those linebackers are 3-star Tayshawn Alston, 37th ranked edge in the country. He's going to be a linebacker at South Carolina. You have 3-star Donovan Darden. He's the 44th ranked linebacker in the country. And then you have 3-star Jaden Breaker, and he's ranked as the 75th best edge in the country. And then A.J. Holloway. And A.J. Holloway is the 98th ranked linebacker in the country. At defensive back, you have 2 of them. You have 3-star DeMarcus Leach, 75th ranked safety in the country. 3-star Christopher Hatfield, 89th ranked cornerback in the country. And then you have an athlete, and I really don't know where 3-star Jaquel Holman's going to play. He's ranked as the 28th best athlete in the country, according to 24/7 Sports. With Jaquel, he could play, they talked about him playing offense, running back, maybe slot wide receiver, gadget guy. They talked about him playing linebacker. They talked about him playing in the secondary. And he's a kid that Alex and I saw up close and in person at a Gamecock camp, 7-on-7 camp. And I'll just tell you this, the kid looks like an SEC player. He's strong, athletic, can jump, can catch, can run. He's a kid that the Gamecock coaching staff is very, very excited about, despite 3-star ranking by his name. And then to round out the class, you have 3-star kicker Max Kelly, who's actually ranked the #1 kicker in the country. So the big question now is, where do the Gamecocks go next? Looking at that, you have, 18 guys in the class so far. Gamecocks have 27 scholarship seniors on the roster this year. Some may have additional eligibility, but the point remains that they can take a pretty big class this year if they elect to do so. Shane Beamer has been steadfast that he wants to build this program from the high school recruiting ranks and supplement it through the portal. So even if they took 28 kids this year and you have 27 seniors, some may have, some more eligibility left, some might not. And you factor in, you're probably going to lose some kids to the NFL draft. Happens every year. Definitely some kids are going to transfer. So if you're looking at a class of 28 kids and then maybe an additional attrition of 10 kids, you still have room to get 10 players in the transfer portal. So I've been saying for a long time, I thought this class would be maybe 22 to 25 kids. But just looking through some of the numbers and the kids that they're still on, I really do think this class could get up to 27, 28. And there is no maximum amount of kids you can sign anymore. So we went through who's in the class right now. Now let's talk about where the Gamecocks go next. Alex, I think at quarterback the Gamecocks are probably done. They're probably just going to take Cutter out of the high school ranks. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Running back, probably looking at 1, maybe 2.
Yeah, I'm thinking 1, and then maybe look at the portal. Because I think we'll have to wait to see who kind of pops up on the recruiting board here.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I couldn't tell you a name that I felt like the Gamecocks had significant traction with at running back right now. I know they have offers out. I don't know how. I think they've only had on official visit one. One kid came in for an official visit, and he committed.
Jeff Overton went to Virginia Tech.
Yeah, he went to Virginia Tech. So quarterback done, running back probably 1, maybe see who pops out in their senior year. Wide receiver, probably 1 more. And, I think all eyes are on Malik Clark. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I think as you said, all eyes are on Malik Clark. And I think, if they find a way to land him, then first of all, that's a great wide receiver haul if they can find a way to land Malik Clark on what they already have. But, I think they land him. If they land him, I think that they'll be done there.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that, the Gamecocks did a really good job in the portal at wide receiver. I think, seeing some of these kids up close and in person, they look athletic, they look the part. But Malik Clark has been the #1 priority, the #1 player on the wide receiver board for the coaches for a long time. And I think that right now all their eggs are in that basket. And, if Malik Clark decides to go to North Carolina, or I think North Carolina is the primary competition at this point, but, potentially, might just call it a day and call it one of the best wide receiver classes in Gamecock recruiting history to bring in 2 4-stars and a highly ranked 3-star who, Jaden Sellers himself has an argument to be a 4-star. So probably 1 more wide receiver, but I think if they don't get Clark, then, they'll probably just call it a day there. Tight end, probably done, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. You still have Mike Tyler out there, the tight end out of Hammond. I think we'll just kind of see what happens there, but I could see just Preston Douglas in the class.
Yeah, and who was the kid that we saw, the 7-on-7 that has come 2 or 3 times now and not got an offer?
Skinner, Michael Skinner.
Yeah, and he's committed to Louisville.
Cincinnati,
same thing. So we'll see. I mean, I don't think they're going to make a move on him. So maybe the Mike Tyler kids have probably done at tight end. Offensive line, probably 2 to 3 more, give or take. I mean, you can never have enough bodies there.
Yeah, that's going to be one where we kind of see where the recruiting board goes into the season, because you got a guy like Isaac Sauls who's committed on Friday, and you also got Cortez Smith, who I think probably are trending away towards South Carolina right now. So we'll have to see where the board kind of goes with that.
Yeah, and then you got Jalen Gilchrist who's out there. I don't know if they're going to do anything with Juan Gaston. Are they still pursuing him, or have they kind of cooled, or is he cooled?
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going to go. I'm not sure a whole lot will happen there.
Yeah, I think that I think you could probably try and go get Jalen Gilchrist, go get Isaac Sauls Jr., and then they're not going to turn down a good player that wants to come. And they're going to be players that pop during the season. They get the film and they say, "Wow, look at this guy! He's a mauler." So we're probably saying 2 to 3 more offensive linemen. Defensive line, even though they have 4 committed, I really think 2 to 3 more. And as someone mentioned, I believe it was Craig actually. Again, thanks, Craig. They've got to find a way to get some more defensive tackles on the roster, and I just don't know if it's going to come from the high school ranks right now. Is there anybody on your radar that we should be thinking about, talking about?
Not off the top of my head. The one who is not a high school rank, but you still got Zay Hardy out there who's in the JUCO at East Mississippi, who I think, seems like South Carolina is a pretty good spot for. But they're going to have to battle some of these bigger schools like Alabama and Auburn who have offered him out of East Mississippi. But I think he's probably that top guy right there, and we'll see what else happens there.
Yeah, I mean, you got 4-star edge Bryce Davis. I think that he had a good visit. I think that, he had a lot to think about. It seems like the Gamecocks have faded there a little bit. And it's never a good thing when Clemson comes in and just, I'm not going to say he's going to go to Clemson, but yeah, there's a lot of momentum there with Clemson at the moment. The guy we didn't talk about is 5-star edge Jared Smith. High priority for the Gamecocks. I think the Gamecocks feel okay there, feel pretty good there. I don't know when he's going to commit. I think he's talked about doing it in August.
He's August 3rd.
August 3rd. So
he and Jalen Gilchrist are August 3rd.
So, you talk about maybe two or three more at the defensive line, and then maybe it's, portal hunting again, but that's just a really difficult place to go portal hunting. But, the Gamecocks have a good story to sell there, though, Alex. I mean, especially that D tackle spot.
Right, yeah, pretty much if you're recruiting in the portal for D tackle, you can tell these guys, look, you got a really good chance to come in and play right away. Look at a guy like DeAndre Jules and Markel Goodwin. Those guys are going to play pretty big roles for South Carolina this year. Yeah,
and Markwell has a couple of years left too, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
I see a question here about do you think Jalen Gilchrist will go to Maryland? I mean, Alex, I don't want to speak for you, but I think it's a Maryland-South Carolina battle here. Maybe some teams on the fringe, maybe on the outside that could, make a last-second push. But I think it's really just home state, or I don't know if he's from Maryland, but, pretty much home state school, or South Carolina at this point. But we'll know in about 2-3 weeks, I guess. Linebacker, they got to be done, right? They're done at linebacker.
Yeah, they got 4 right now. I think that probably caps it right now.
Because you think about who they brought in last year. I mean, that's 6 really good prospects, and there's still some guys with eligibility as well at linebacker. Defensive back, probably 2 to 3 more. Could probably stand 3 to 4 more. I don't know.
Really
but 4-star safety Kendall Daniels Jr. Been a big fan of the Gamecocks for a while on the recruiting trail. He had an article came out about him a couple of days ago, or maybe it was yesterday, saying that he wants to be 1,000% sure before he commits anywhere. He wants to be over. I think the Gamecocks are definitely in his lead group. 4-star safety Lagonza Hayward. I think the Gamecocks are definitely in his lead group. 4-star cornerback Jonte Gilbert is kind of like the international man of mystery. I guess we got to see if the Gamecocks bring him in on an official visit. I know he has one scheduled, but his top 5 is weird, man.
Yeah, I can't remember what the date is right now for his official visit, but yeah, the recruitment's kind of been an interesting one to watch. It seemed like, obviously was committed to Ohio State, then backed off that. It seemed like South Carolina had some momentum, and then it seemed like Clemson had some momentum, and then had a top 7 that had just kind of a bunch of different schools. So it's kind of been an interesting recruitment, and I'm interested to see if that official visit, how that goes and if it happens.
Yeah, I think he even had like Georgia Southern or Georgia State in his top 7. It's a weird recruitment, and I'll be interested to see where his ranking ends up because he had a lot of buzz and was a 5-star when he decommitted from Ohio State as like a sophomore, I think, and then he's now ranked in like the 130s overall. Which look, 130s overall is still a daggum good prospect, but it's just interesting when you see a drop like that. But kicker, punter, long snapper, Gamecocks are probably done there. I can't imagine they're going to take anybody else. So, you add all that together, and let's just say, the guys we talked about, maybe a running back, Malik Clark, Jalen Gilchrist, Cortez Smith, Juan Gaston, Isaac Souls Jr., Bryce Davis, Xavier Hardy, Jared Smith, Kendall Daniels Jr., Lagonza Hayward, Jonte Gilbert. Let's just say the Gamecocks landed all of them, and we just told you it's likely not going to happen. But if you do that, you're looking at 28 players in the class. And that's a big class.
That's a big class, yeah.
But at the same time, I don't think South Carolina ever wants to be, a program that just cycles through players and just sends people to the transfer portal. I do think they want to be a developmental school at the very least. But I mean, with 27 seniors and potentially I don't know how many transfers are going to be. There were 18 last year off last year's roster of transfers.
You're always going to have some. It's just a fluctuating number, but you're always going to have some.
I mean, I don't see the downside in taking 28, even 30 guys, and I've really changed my mind on that in the last 2 weeks. I've been thinking about it. You take them and you see what you got, and you figure out who can work, who can't, get your numbers, and then you still got plenty of room for the transfer portal. I mean, you really don't want to take 16 to 18 guys a year in the transfer portal. That's not how you build a culture. But, if you need to take 7 to 10 to fill in gaps, then you can do that. And then, it's so interesting in this era of college football because at any moment, a player can decide, I'm transferring. Or, the kid last year, the defensive tackle that just decided to quit midseason because he didn't want to go to Missouri and potentially burn his red shirt, and now he's at Georgia. You just never know what's going to happen. Yeah. So I think you get these kids signed in high school because I think it's just a lot easier than it is to recruit the transfer portal. But anyway, we'll see what happens there. But, I mean, if the Gamecocks were able to get 80% of the guys we just talked about, I mean, you're clearly talking about a top 25 class in the country. You're talking about potentially a top 20 class, and we haven't even got to Shrine Bowl. We haven't got to high school seasons. We haven't got to all-star games. I mean, it's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, of all those guys we mentioned, there's still gonna be guys. Probably, we still got a senior season for these 2025 guys. There's probably gonna be a name or two that pops up that South Carolina goes really after because they still developed and have a strong senior season and rise rankings and stuff like that. So I think there's still gonna be a few names pop up with one with who they're tracking right now.
Oh, not only that, I mean, it wouldn't be a college football recruiting season without decommitments and flips and, secret visitors and player X and player Y. And, these coaches aren't just saying, okay, well, we have this pool of 50 kids, 60 kids. We're only going to pull from this pool. They're still working other people too. So it would not surprise me at all to see a flip or two over the next couple months, or a decommitment somewhere, and then 2 months later commit to South Carolina. And you got teams that already have 25, 30 kids in their class right now. They can't take anymore, and they might have some players that decide, man, I think I need to reopen my commitment or reopen my recruitment. So I thought it was good for us to reset that. I think that, all the players we talked about took an official visit to South Carolina. There's some traction there on every single one of those players. And, we got a lot of commitments coming up. A lot of these kids want to get it done before their senior year starts. And done is a very relative term nowadays in recruitment. So
never done.
Never, ever done. But that's going to do it for tonight's show. Some of the things that Alex and I did want to share with you is we only got 46 days, 45 days till college football starts. So we're going to have a ton on this show previewing the schedule. We're going to be talking all about fall camp. We're going to be talking about everything that we're hearing about players that are showing out, players that are surprises, depth chart projections, probably some special guests. We're working on some special guests right now, but we'll have our bold predictions for the season. And don't forget, like, this is the off season. This is where, we have a lot of talk about recruiting, but once the season heats up, there's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about just with each and every game that takes place and previewing games. It's one of the most fun parts of the season, and I'm so excited for Alex to be on that journey with me this upcoming season because it was so much fun last year, and I'm so excited to have someone with a lot more wisdom than me breaking everything down.
Yeah, I can't wait. It feels like summer's already flying by, and football season will be here before we know it.
Oh my gosh, it will be. Well, I want to thank all of you for listening tonight. Join us on YouTube, however you found us. When you spend your time with us, you give us the most valuable thing you have, which is your time, and it's never underappreciated. And we appreciate y'all so much, and we love all of y'all, and just thank you for tuning in with us tonight. That's going to do it for us. We will be back Tuesday at 9 p.m. And who knows, might have some commitments popping that we need to talk about. So we'll see you all then. Have a great evening.